Sustainability involves the social, economic, and environmental issues that impact us globally and locally. And to live sustainably is to acknowledge and enact change on these issues. Community, food security, and land-based education are some initiatives that exemplify the respect and harmony that nature requires for a sustainable planet. This is a story about 20 years of Mr. K's sustainable yard work, school sport academic communities, and authentic reconciliation at Don Mills CI that allowed for persistent work during a worldwide pandemic. This is a story about a person who transformed his yard.
My name is Dan Kunanec. I'm a teacher at Don Mills CI, and I'm also the head of the department. And the name of my department is lusciously known as the Emerging Grain Technologies and Environmental Stewardship Department.
With the help of funding, expert consultants, and his students, Dan Kunanec, or Mr. K, has constructed community school spaces, a greenhouse,
Seedlings from the greenhouse right there.
vegetable box garden, composting system, fruit orchard, vineyard, an aquaponics system, and even a pizza oven. Dan welcomes every learning opportunity.
I find it quite fascinating that a lot of the beans did okay. It means in the future, if I plant the cucumbers late, that we can have our very, very first project of the year to be pickling cucumbers.
In noticing spaces for new projects,
And here we have a few beans that have been lovingly given to us. And they say these are our favorite beans and you should grow some.
and culturally connecting students to their food,
This is lemongrass.
he utilizes experiential learning as a way to connect students to place.
I think is that his program reach across the spectrum to so many kids and give them an opportunity to realize that they can still be part of something.
From rugby standpoint, he also taught us, even though you're on one team, the rugby community is a whole big family, so whenever you're playing each other, another team, you respect them.
He more or less guided a lot of us in the right direction.
So it's not hard to motivate. It's exhausting. There's no doubt. It's very challenging sometimes. Shockingly, you bang your head against the wall on a lot of projects and trying to get permissions. But you can't be resilient unless there's resistance. You can't be brave unless you're scared. So.
Overcoming obstacles such as structured policies, lack of funding, and unreliable support resulted in student-written grants, support from administrators, and genuine collaboration with dependable colleagues.
My name is Ben Gross. I am the head of social and global studies at Don Mills Collegiate Institute. Do you remember the moment you met me? I don't remember the moment. Like, it wasn't love at first sight or anything.
Well,
I mean, eventually we had to figure each other out a bit first. Yeah, we.
I think when you brought in Phil Cote.
Oh, Phil was right before school started. Yeah, because we were down here for that.
That was in the shop.
Yeah.
That was a moment for me where I knew we were.
Yeah, because we had a good chat after that too.
With Phil.
And then we went out and did tours of the grounds, talking about like local species, native species, and stuff like that. And then after that, the three of us sort of sat around and before it too, sort of chatting about what existed here, and what it could look like. So I've forgotten about that. Mm-hmm. Thanks, Dan.
Through this collaboration, place-based education at Don Mills transitioned into land-based education. Can you tell us why it's called the Three Sisters? Or
Yeah, we have one bean over here. It's the only one that took. So this is how it's actually supposed to work as well. It's supposed to climb up corn. So this is not a traditional Three Sisters, also known as the Three Sustainers garden.
This is. One of the largest Haudenosaunee mound gardens to exist at present day. This traditional garden guides Dan's place-based education towards reconciliation. The construction would not have been possible without the careful guidance of this man, who Dan and Ben met the day they first became acquainted.
So, ani bojo chichak and adishnikaz maingin odem Toronto adunji. My name is Alan Colley. My spirit name is Whooping Crane. Here we are standing next to this beautiful mound that's been built here in the school. And so this mound is talking about relationship. It's talking about sustainability. It's talking about hard work. It's talking about reciprocal relations. And alone, just within the plant world, those three sisters, those corn, beans, and squash, all play a part in helping each other grow. The squash create a ground cover. They're full of these thorns and spikes that keep away a lot of critters. These beans that release the nitrogen in the soil so that they can all get their nutrients. But then the corn as well, that creates a carbon. It creates the foundation for when it lays on the ground for the next year's growth. Just on corn, beans, and squash alone can give your body what it needs to be healthy. In the soil here is another relationship where we have wood, lumber, we have fish, and we have ash from that fire. And so inside of this soil, it is constantly living, it's constantly growing, it's constantly giving back. This, in 20 years, will have new soil. It will have grown soil versus most of our farming practices today deplete the soil. It destroys it. This way, the wood that is inside of here over 20 years will decompose. And this mound that we built will have all new soil inside of it. So then we can leave it, grow another one, and we come back 120 years from now, this soil will be perfect again in its way.
I'll be honest, the first year we planted our mound gardens, I was really interested. I would say the squash that grew in the mound gardens outperformed our raised beds irrigation systems. It's very challenging to figure out if you're connecting with the right people or getting quote unquote like good information around Indigenous knowledge and what you can share and what shouldn't be shared and what you should do and what you shouldn't do. One, because as Canadians we have not been taught any of this by our educational system. We've been horribly failed by it. So as adults we often have never actually encountered this as an issue. Most of our thoughts about how we do stuff is we learn it and then it's ours and we can do what we want with it. And that's a large part of our educational process. Whereas in different Indigenous cultures, that's not the case.
As a settler of Tikaronto, I'm grateful to be in the presence of Indigenous teachings and acknowledge the need for caution, as the oppressive power of colonization onto indigeneity is the same form of power that seeks to extract Indigenous knowledge.
I don't know anything. I know just a tiny little bit of anything. And so the moment I can be connected in a place from somebody else that has lived there, has had the experience, that knows that place, to me, my responsibility is to be a steward to them.
In terms of like knowing who to contact and what to do, I've made several mistakes in that area doing different things, and I've learned from each one. The key is to not be defensive about it, to own it, to apologize, make amends, and do better. Next goals for projects here are always up in the air because I have to leave space for things I don't know because there's so much I don't know.
This place-based education is open-minded and resilient for good reason.
The government has received the advice of Ontario's Chief Medical Officer of Health and the COVID-19 command table, recommending that the province close down all public elementary, middle, and high schools for 2 weeks following March break.
The Premier announced today that Ontario's 2 million students will not be back in class at least until May 4th.
Well, good afternoon. The safety of our children is my top priority. And one thing I will never do is take unnecessary risk when it comes to our children.
The COVID-19 pandemic that swept the globe, shutting down schools in early 2020, showed the deep connection to place within Dan's community.
When COVID struck and I got into the garden with him as a helper because he had no kids here for the support. Normally during the summer, he would have kids that would come by during the summer and still help.
I was already thinking about how important it is to get this food out to families in need, and that there would be more need than usual.
Once COVID hit, I was actually thinking of Dan, and I knew he would probably have some ideas. I ended up doing a little video.
If you are fortunate enough to be able to have some extra things laying around or can spend a couple extra bucks to help out.
So we came here every week, every Friday, to donate whatever food we bought personally and whatever food friends and family gave to us to bring to the school. My mom's part of Rotary Club. I shared the idea with her, and we got $2,000 from the Leaside Rotary Club to donate for food.
Lorenzo provided us 24 gallons of ready-made soup. We break down weekly and pack up. Chefs from Joey's had some pantry items that were not going to be used during the initial close down.
The money and grocery donations, in combination with Breakfast for Learning, supported local Don Mills CI families.
So we did 5 months worth of food once a week.
And he's using his fruits and vegetables for those families that were in need too. So not only are those families eating well, they're probably eating it better than they were before. They were probably struggling a little bit to begin with, and a lot of people in those circumstances are not eating the healthiest because sometimes healthier food is a little bit more expensive.
We put everything together, the garden, preparing the garden and the planning and the meals and the food, and getting it out basically at least once a week. And that was mainly my role. I was the driver that delivered.
There was a group of rugby alumnus that graduated from the school here that are all police officers as well. There's 5 of us in total, and for me it was a simple just, hey, let's go meet up and talk about this. And everybody was on board. To a weekly event where we were here every Wednesday, and whatever needed to be done, it would get done. And then eventually that 5 turned into 6, that 6 turned into 8, that 8 turned into 10.
With a high unemployment rate and a failed attempt with student volunteerism across Canada,
What I was able to start doing was recruiting students.
And I have been volunteering here at the urban farming program. And I met Dan through a couple of colleagues that were saying, hey, you're interested in environmental education, this would be a great opportunity. Learn more about not just gardening, but how we can bring education into learning about food security and how accessible gardening actually is in the city.
What motivates me to keep coming back and volunteering with Dan here is I very much believe in the project that's going on at Don Mills Collegiate. I think that schools are a community hub, and there's so much potential for it to really give more to the community than just the education of its young ones.
this experience had a reciprocal outcome as the community gave and received.
That was amazing, and that was very touching to know how much these families appreciated it. You know, there were many times after delivery that sometimes I might have a few minutes to chat, and you could hear, you know, how they were saying, you know, this is so special. You know what I mean? There was one customer that sometimes would always say, it seems like you guys know what I am missing. You know what I mean? She said, every time I look at these bags of groceries that I pack, it seemed like it was something that I was thinking about. You know what I mean? So it was a good time to connect with people and to be part of something that is probably bigger than all of us, you know what I mean? To be sharing and helping others, you know, it was just absolutely amazing.
This has been a really humbling experience. It's good.
I believe that caring for one's community is the first step in caring for nature, as we ourselves are nature. These tough times have demonstrated the real need for equitable support.
You know, a lot of these communities are people of color too, so and they are being hit most hardest during COVID as well. So it's just to push that for those communities and to better educate them too through their food that they're eating as well.
And so, the slow pedagogy of place must be accessible to all students, and it must be coupled with action to tackle the sustainability crisis that exists everywhere. I call on all educators to tackle it together.
So I've been learning so many different ways that we can, even with the littlest amount of space, what can you do to get others interested in gardening and knowing where their food comes from.
What I've learned from Dan is that there's so much potential at public schools to create sort of an outdoor environment that can be truly connected to fostering a healthy and happy community.
There's a connection in environmental education through every single subject you teach, whether that's physical education, science, math, the arts. It can all be connected with each other, because when stuff sits on the soil, it will rot.
Land-based education is about inner work and reflection, and reminds us that we all have a place and responsibility.
So one thing that I think is important to share is in my journey in doing more stuff around Indigenous education and learning, like where the lines are, which I'm still learning, is I had a conversation with, I'm not sure if I can say which mentor it was, just one of my Indigenous mentors who I said, you know, I'm always worried that I'm going to do the wrong thing. I know this is something that you've stated, this is something that people talk about. Like, I always think I'm going to offend somebody or say something wrong or teach something I'm not supposed to teach, and I'm scared of that. And she looked at me and she said, my people were sent to residential schools. I experienced incredible trauma in school. My people are still being killed in Canada. There's thousands of missing and murdered Indigenous women. I'm here. Do you think I'm not scared? As much as I might actually be worried about doing things wrong, the fear I experience is mine to deal with.
I reflect on Dan, Ben, and Chichok's work and recognize that my journey will never end.
And so we have to think about those concepts of how to support each other in ways to see everybody grow and everybody have that benefit. I think we're finally at a time in history where we as people really have to realize the power that we have. Government is a company. It's not elected candidates in ways that uphold community values of family and culture and relation. They are appointed figures of political family lineage that were sent here to exploit humans, the forests, the minerals, the animals.
There's so much more to learn. My desire to be a steward, reconcile, and act for sustainable change will continue my search for the answers to all my questions, and yet, I know that some may never be answered. When feeling uncomfortable with this work or overcome with indifference, I'm re-inspired by these words.
I tell anyone this is 20 years of work, this particular grouping of projects, and so yeah, it is a long process, it's a long thing, it's a lot of work, but it's also very scalable, and it's not one big project, it's one overall concept, but it's a lot of little projects, and if people were to pick and choose from some of the things that we did, or more importantly, I think, would be to be inspired by something that we've done and come up with their own concept. But let's also not forget that I'm not doing this on my own. I have the help of many, many wonderful students and many wonderful volunteers and many great colleagues that I work with that's the whole point of working in a school, is you get to work with all those people. And 20 years later, you're finding some of those same people coming back and working with you again.
It's my turn to start my own yard. It's a large feat, but it's land-based education in communities such as Don Mills that shows us that making a change starts small and grows larger than anything you ever predicted. I wonder where I'll start. Will you join me?
If we are going to make a difference, we really have to be that difference. We have to really strengthen ourselves and support each other into making that change possible.